Welcome to the Integrated Advisory Series, where we talk about the evolution of wealth management and how a client's most trusted advisor, their accountant, will lead this evolution. I'm your host, David Judy, and I'm joined by my co-host, partner, and good friend, Tim Copeland. Welcome to the Integrated Advisory Series. This is a series that my friend and partner and co-host, Tim Copeland, is going to be joining me on. We're going to be talking about the evolution of wealth management and how a client's most trusted advisor, their accountant, is going to lead that evolution. So what I thought we'd do to start with is spend the first episode giving you a little bit of background on who we are, how we got here, and go from there. So Tim, you want to just say hello and go from there?
Thanks, David. Yeah, so David and I have worked together for many years now, and we came together in about 2007. Common goal of changing the financial services industry and coming at it from a bit of different angles. My background as a chartered accountant, as you know, David, came from an accounting family. Originally, rural accounting firm my father started that grew into the city of Calgary, and so I've always been around the accounting community my whole life. Worked with KPMG out of university, so I got to experience a little bit of the big firm approach. Worked in a mid-sized firm, joined my father's firm years back, and that's where David and I connected and started to build what we refer to today as an integrated advisory model with accounting firms. And so, yeah, I think at that time building that out, I understood that we needed some different skills than just the accounting firm skills, the tax skills that we had, that it really was going to take some specialists, some understanding, and that's what really brought David and I together a number of years back. Yeah. So David, your story, I think, what brought us together was your background in the financial services industry. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I started very early. I started in the insurance and wealth management space. I think I was 22 years old, just out of university, and started with a great company called Iowa Foresters, and about a $6 billion insurance and investment company. And I started in Toronto. I was born and raised in the Okanagan Valley. My wife was born and raised in Calgary. We met at the University of Calgary, but I was out in Toronto and decided that's where I'd get started. And in a short period of time, I moved from being a salesperson to being a sales manager. And in my early 30s, I was actually running Canadian sales operation for all of Canada for that particular company. During some really turbulent times, interesting, the company itself had changed a couple leaders during that time period. So I was involved in actually taking part in building two totally different distribution systems. So we went from independent people with branch offices across the country to taking all those branch offices, shutting them down, and making all those people truly independent. And then moving 180 degrees and going and building these offices back up and building the bricks and mortar. So real change in the industry, but it gave me an opportunity to use a lot of consultants and to really look outside of Canada for solutions. And near the end, I was a young guy in his early 30s. Virtually everybody else in the management team was in their late 50s, early 60s. I wanted to change the world, and most of those individuals wanted to keep it the same. And it just wasn't feeling like a great fit. The real crux was I had 3 kids under the age of 8. I did 135,000 miles on the airplane going all across Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom, helping build distribution, and decided that I wanted to be a better husband and a better dad, and it was time to start a company called WealthGo. So I started WealthGo almost exactly 20 years ago. And what's fascinating is started WealthGo 20 years ago and thought I was just going to be myself and an admin assistant. And obviously today we manage well over $500 million in assets just through our accounting firm partnerships that we'll speak to. And when I started in the business, what was interesting is I dealt with actuaries and accountants all day, every day. So dealing with a business owner client, it just seemed natural to me that I'd meet with the client, figure out who their accountant was, and go and meet with their accountant. That's what I did with all the first clients I had, went and met with the accountant, and all of them said exactly the same thing. You do realize you're the first person that's ever come and talked to me, right?
Yeah, and I think that's really probably where you and I first got to meet each other was through some mutual clients.
Exactly.
And, you know, I was a tax partner within the firm and, you know, working on different clients and had come across a client that we'd worked on. And I think that's exactly what happened. I think you were one of the first that actually reached out to us to talk about financial solutions and how they fit and what our perspective was. So that was, I think, the start of our relationship. And for myself, I think within the accounting firm, you know, what really kicked that off for me was, you know, you're spending a lot of time, putting a lot of hours in. You know, I did have the benefit of looking at my father's career and how he grew it. Loved his career, loved his work, worked very, very hard, put in a lot of long hours. And it was really about selling time. And for me, I wanted to be able to have a business that was a little bit different. You know, you could generate revenue while you were sleeping, you know, and at the same token, have broader conversations with clients. As a tax person, you know, you wanted to tend to focus on tax issues, and those weren't always what was important to clients. Oftentimes it was their retirement or health issues in the family or different things like that. And, you know, wanting to broaden out my career is where that sort of started. I wanted to move into more financial planning, into more wealth management. And I think meeting you was a bit of that opportunity.
Yeah, it's fascinating too. And I think you did that shift. You went and got your certified financial planner designation, I believe, and went down that path. It is interesting when you start talking about revenue. So I came from a business that it was, your goal was making sure that you were never compensated on an hourly basis, because it was truly compensation on value creation versus compensation on activity. And I think that we had a couple challenges initially as we started in our partnership side. To give a little bit of history, the firms that Tim's father started, Catalyst, was actually, we started actually forming a company together initially. And I still remember being in one of those first meetings and somebody saying, well, I mean, how are you going to track your whip? And I'm like, my whip? Why do I need a whip? And then having an understanding that somebody actually wanted me to go into a spreadsheet and track every minute and time spent with every single client. And let me just state that I didn't adapt well to that to that strategy. Well, I never got there. Let's be honest. But I think as well, it gave me a really clear, I guess a better understanding of some of the challenges that were faced in the accounting industry, but also that the structure, the discipline. And it was interesting. I think that combining these two businesses and these two philosophies, I think what's been the foundation of our success as we've gone forward.
Yeah, I think that, you know, obviously it started with a relationship and a connection that came from that understanding that we should be working together.
Right.
And we'll create a better result by working together. And that sort of kicked it off. But I think the benefit that we did have was to sort of accelerate our growth and success. At that time with Catalyst, they were part of an international organization called PKF. Right. And it was a network of accounting firms globally that shared best practices. And we had the ability, as you remember, to tap into that story and to learn a lot from what was going on in accounting firms around the world. Yep. And we spent in the early stages when we were building a business plan, how do we integrate a wealth management philosophy into an accounting firm? We didn't just sort of start with it and kind of
Oh, we're brilliant. We're brilliant. Every idea we had was original, wasn't it? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we had some fortunate relationships that we were able to, I think we went to Atlanta and we, different places with firms, large accounting firms in the United States that had success doing this and had been at it for a decade or two, which was really a bit of that light bulb and where my passion for our profession in Canada started to really take shape, and a bit of that calling for me, which was that I felt what was happening in Canada, we were losing a little bit of ground with what was happening around the world. A lot of firms, as an example, in the United States, the regulation environment changed in the late 90s. It leveled the playing field for CPA firms, allowed them to compete with the big banks. Referral fees, all those types of things needed full disclosure, but were acceptable. And it really changed the landscape in the United States and other countries. Canada, really, and we're sitting here today in 2020, it's 20 years later, and our as we've merged the CPA, CA, CMA, CGAs into one, we're now at a stage where those regulations are changing. And
well, it's interesting because I think it was 10, 12 years ago you told me that they were going to change, next
kind of missed that one.
Yeah. It's taken a lot longer than what we anticipated, for sure.
But exciting, and I think we're on the cusp of some big change in our country. It's a different landscape. We've got a much more consolidated banking system. They've had a big head start. We see a lot of the banks moving into traditional accounting services now. We're hearing more and more through the accounting community that there is that competition happening. It's getting a little tougher when banks are offering some of those services for free as part of a bigger picture. But that's really the passion that I've built in working with you, David, is we want to change this financial services industry in this country. Similar to what's happened around the world, where the CPAs have stepped in, really professionalized the delivery of wealth management.
Well, and I'll tell you, for me, and no offense to the industry I came from, the insurance and investment industry, but I've always been a huge advocate of education, building professional process, running a professional business, understanding the risks associated not only with business but what your client's experiencing. And for all intent and purpose, I believe I was an outlier. You looked around the room and you said there were not a lot of people that seemed to be a lot like me. And I think that's what really attracted me to working with you and more importantly, working with all the accountants and the accounting firms we work with today, is that I had a chance to actually start working with like-minded professional people. And my belief from a self-centered perspective is that group is poised. It's poised to absolutely disrupt this industry. And not only is it poised to disrupt this industry, and we think that's going to be the case, we're already seeing that, and that's been the case south of the border. So you're right, we spent lots of time in firms that had built best practices and been very, very successful. But I don't know, if you're going to be on a team, you might as well be on a winning team. So although I am not a CPA, at the end of the day, I'd much rather join the team than fight against it. I think the other interesting thing, you mentioned the industry changing a bit. I remember that interview that we did, it was probably 7-8 years ago. We were looking to add another staff person onto our wealth planning business unit. And there was a young guy from TD who came in and interviewed. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that and how that sort of changed our perspective on the real competition in the wealth management space. Yeah,
I've had the opportunity to speak to different accounting groups on that, and one of the comments that I'll make, and we'll talk about this in other parts of the series that we're doing here, but one of the big questions that I'll usually ask is, who do you feel your competition is today? And the answers are normally BDO, Grant Thornton. They're the firms that you'd expect to hear, and I'll usually ask them what they think about the banks and whether they're competition. And there's usually mixed responses to that. And I think that experience, David, we've always known because we could look at around the world and why they did what they did as a CPA profession. It was because of the banks and the financial firms. They needed to level the playing field, and they needed to move into those areas just like those firms were moving into the accounting space. And so in Canada, we always knew that, but we didn't really have a lot of proof to sort of show that. Today, that's a lot different than it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we had an individual, as you said, try and was interested in working with our firm, and I'd asked that individual what they did, and they worked with the bank and sort of said, accountant, CA, and was interested in the path that I had taken and wanted to do the same thing. And I asked them what they were doing in the bank, and they said, well, I'm doing tax returns. And that was the first time that I had heard that comment. And it kind of threw me off. And I remember saying, well, no, like, what do you mean? Like personal tax returns, or like, and the individual said, no, I'm doing corporate returns and trust returns and all these, basically all types of returns. And then I said, well, how do you guys structure that? And how do you, are you billing clients, or like you track and whip, as you said? And, he's like, no, it's included in their service offering as part of the package. They don't pay for it. And so that for me, as a guy that has always had accounting in his blood, really kicked something off, because it scared me that as a profession, we're falling behind, and we aren't in a position where, our regulatory environment will allow us to return the favor. And over time, that trusted advisor status that we had will be in jeopardy as other firms are able to add more value into traditional accounting space. So that for me was really a kickoff. Today, you don't have to look very far. You can look at every single bank. Royal Bank has a CPA program that they administer. They hire articling students. All of them have tax accounting structures where they charge fees. It's laid out, so it's an interesting change.
It's changing, and it's changing fast, right? And that's really the key for integrated advisory. It's interesting. Today we use that phrase, and it just sort of rolls off your tongue. 20 years ago, when I was starting WealthGo, I was trying to build an integrated advisory practice, whether or not I realized that. And today, and it's only taken us 20 years, but I think we've figured it out. So on our next episodes, what we're going to talk about is how did we do that? So how do we put those pieces together? What are some of the key learnings that we had? And we had a few over the last number of years. And I hope you join us. One of the things I'd like to also point out is that you can get more information about our integrated advisory model and how we run the system by visiting integratedadvisory.ca in our resource section, and look forward to talking to you on our next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Integrated Advisory Podcast. If you're tired of feeling short on time and are looking for a better way to grow your firm, I want to invite you to download our free ebook, 7 Reasons Why CPAs Are Transforming Their Practice with Integrated Advisory. Visit integratedadvisory.ca/7 reasons. That's integratedadvisory.ca, the number 7 reasons, to download the free ebook today and see why CPA firms just like yours are transforming the wealth management world. Visit integratedadvisory.ca/7 reasons to download this free ebook today.